Welcome to the Forged in Fire podcast. Meet your host, Nate Farmer Eden, co-founder and CEO of Eden Capital, dedicated to achieving financial independence for his community, and Cole Farrell, founder and CEO of Vulcan Capital, a real estate expert with a passion for empowering others through education. Stay tuned for another episode right here on Forged in Fire.
Hello, welcome back everybody to another exciting episode of Forged in Fire. I'm your co-host, Nate Farmer Eden. Allow me to introduce my partner, Cole. Come on stage, brother.
What's going on, Nate? How are we doing today?
Doing good, man. It's a nice and sunny day and the outlook's looking good. How about you, sir? How you holding up?
Doing good. Everything's kind of moving along. It's a Tuesday. It's a little dreary here, but whatever, we'll take it. So I'm super excited for our guest today. We've been on her podcast before. We had a lot of good conversations, and it's just going to be exciting. But before we get into that, let me go over just a couple quick housekeeping things. First, please leave us a rating or review. As always, we want to help grow and we want to educate others, so that would help us to do that. Second, of course, subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode, right? And another thing, we have an event coming up. It's going to be how to find your first real estate investment deal. We're going to have the link below with the date, time, and all the details. But we're going to be going into mindset, systems, processes, everything that you would need to just get started. So please click that link below and we'll hope to see you there. And last but not least, please buckle up because it's going to be a hell of a ride and we're going to have a good time here today.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Dude, I am excited. Today, we have the pleasure and honor of interviewing Emma Powell. Emma went from a stay-at-home mom of 6 to a multimillionaire. She has partnered in just about 1,000 deals to date, and she is the co-founder and president of Rise Capital Investments. Emma, how are you doing? Come on stage.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me on. Love the energy.
Oh my goodness, the pleasure is ours. This is super exciting. I mean, I was going through your bio and I saw that you've been featured on like Bigger Pockets and some of these other huge names. So having you come to Forged in Fire, this is just firing me up. So this is exciting. So please, Emma, do us the honor of telling us a little bit about your backstory, kind of what got you here, what brought you here, and then how you grew into the successful entrepreneur that you are today.
Yeah, like you said, I was a stay-at-home mom, 6 homeschooled kids. When I was a teenager, young adult, I did not want to even get married and have kids. So it kind of surprised me. Once I found the right guy and we had our first baby, I thought, okay, yeah, this is actually pretty awesome. And so I remember when she was about 18 months old, I was trying to go back to school, finish my bachelor's degree. I was just very upset that my life was happening a little faster than I wanted it to. And I was signing up for classes at Texas State and was trying to find a daycare for her before online school. And I just remember sitting there looking at her and like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I going back to school? Like, I would rather stay here and raise my kids. And so then we had a bunch more, super fun, and kind of figured out like that having them in school became a part-time job for me to keep track of all the teachers, the assignments, the backpacks, things. And I was failing. Like I was not doing a very good job. And I grew up in Washington where homeschooling was super like hybrid, this and that. And so, I mean, the whole point of this story is like, you learn how to think outside the box when those kinds of challenges are presented to you. Like we thought outside the box when we liked having kids, when I became a stay-at-home mom, when we started homeschooling. And that just starts a cycle of being able to take a step back, look at your life critically and say, what's working, what's not working. If it's working and it's mainstream, like that's easy, right? Anybody can do that. And so I try to do the mainstream things as often as possible because it takes less thought, less effort, less critical thinking. But if it's not working, I have to admit to myself, like, I don't like this. I don't like where we are. And I need to change something, and being willing to go down a path of change. And so that's basically what led me to financial freedom in real estate, because once I started homeschooling my kids and kind of got outside the box, my husband had a W-2 where he had to be in an office, but the rest of the 7 of us could do whatever we want, go wherever we want, whenever we wanted. And so Dad's career was putting a big big wet blanket on our lifestyle. And he said to me one time, he said his job was to just go to work, make the money, keep the lights on. And that if we ever wanted to be really wealthy, then I would have to figure that out. And it wasn't, I mean, it sounds like he was a jerk saying that, but he was basically saying like, if I believe in you, if you want something, like go make it happen and I will support you. That's what he was actually saying. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about different business ideas and what I could do from home, what I could do once my kids got old enough that they could babysit each other, things like that, and just really started going down the entrepreneurial rabbit hole and did a lot of different things, graphic designer, photographer, nothing really made that much money. So I was always trying to look for like the highest and best use of my time. Like if I'm going to be a photographer, I should be a wedding photographer because they make the most, right? And so learning those kinds of crafts. And then when I finally was like, what can I do that's going to make the most money? Should I go to engineering school? Should I go to medical school? Should I become some sort of an investor, real estate investor? And I'm like, real estate investor, because I can do that right now without any extra school. And so that's why I went down that road. And not only that, but I knew if I did it right, I would make more money than an engineer or doctor could any day and work part-time instead of full-time. And so that lifestyle is really what led me to real estate. I had been a real estate photographer for 10 years and really loved floor plans and development and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, I'm not just getting into this for the money. I actually like buildings and architecture. I wanted to be an architect for a while. I like drawing and design and all of this kind of stuff that goes along with the real estate. And when my husband lost his job in 2017 and we left Texas, moved to Utah, like in a sudden whirl, it was not a planned move. We sold our farm in Austin and got to Salt Lake and had no debt. We're living in a rental house, owned our cars, no credit cards, anything. And so when we sold that house, we're just renting. I had like almost $500,000 in my pocket. And I thought, this is seed money. I don't need angel investors. I don't need partners. I can just go figure this thing out. And so I started attending every real estate club that I could with a pile of money burning a hole in my pocket, started doing private lending. And then when those loans came back, I started buying up little rental houses and immediately highest and best came into my mind. I knew adding value. We used to buy either new houses in a new neighborhood where those appreciate at a higher rate than an older home. And so I kind of learned that from our personal houses. Then we bought our farm. It was a complete remodel, lots of forced appreciation. So we felt very comfortable with construction management, all of that. And I thought, okay, so if we're going to add a lot of value, and I didn't know words like forced appreciation or value add or any of that kind of thing. I just knew if we want to make the highest and best, I don't even know that word. That term is a development term that I learned later, but that type of thinking. And I thought, okay, well, I got to get into commercial real estate because I knew commercial photography made more money. B2B was going to make more money. And so I said, let's just get into commercial as soon as we can. And just started hanging out with people who were in commercial real estate, just hunting them down at real estate clubs, asking them out for lunch, just whatever they would allow me to do, to go and pitch them a deal or ask them questions and really get in the commercial world. And I knew that I had this mandate that if I wanted to free my husband from this W-2, I need to get serious. I need to be a serious business person and not roll in like a stay-at-home mom who didn't know what I was doing, but also at the same time, not overselling my experience, just saying, I'm here to learn. I'm a hard worker and I'm a go-getter. And people would see that and they would give me time and mentor me and teach me because they're hoping I would like bird dog deals for them or things like that. And so what ended up happening was just a nice network of people. And that's how I ended up finding my first commercial deal, was through that network. Somebody was selling an apartment building. They were fighting with their partners. And I'm like, I'll pick it up. So didn't know what I was doing, but decided to learn along the way. I learned how to underwrite on that deal. It took us 6-ish months to close it because it was off market, had some patient sellers. And little by little, I just learned one step at a time. And I had tried to buy some other deals before that didn't work out. So I'm just mean the first deal we actually bought, not the first commercial deal I ever looked at. But they would just kind of fall apart along the way. And so I would leave them and keep going. And this one just kept growing legs, as they say. And we bought our first 50-unit apartment building. And I sat back and I was like, that took about 1.5 years from I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life to buying my first 50-unit. It was a wild ride.
That's incredible. And it's cool because I think especially the beginning of your story resonates with so many people, the challenges that you ran into, okay, what do I want to do? Where do I go with this? Testing things out, figuring out what works, what doesn't. Then eventually falling on this real estate thing that everyone starts to realize, okay, this is like a golden goose, but what do I do with it? Which direction do I go? And I liked how you talked about your story, how it progressed from kind of the small multi to building up and finding all these different caveats and then eventually landing on the commercial and just seeing the power of it. We're obviously in the same world and we love it and live and breathe it. So it's great to hear it. So do you focus on just commercial now? And if so, so you're shaking your head no. So then second part of my question is, what do you focus on now? What is your primary strategy? Kind of give us more insight on kind of what your bread and butter is right now.
Yeah, my strategy is diversification. I have a good buddy of mine who runs a publicly traded mutual fund, and I was trying to learn the stock market. And I sat down and I was talking about diversification because I'm kind of what do you call it, chicken investor. Like, I may look like I'm taking a lot of risks to some people, but in my mind, I want to make sure that I'm hedged, that I have non-correlated assets, all of that. I don't want to be doing anything like super crazy. I had 6 kids and a husband who doesn't have a job, right? Like, the entire ship is riding on this real estate thing. And so I've tried to be as diversified as possible. So I'm really diversified. And I was mentioning this to him even before I ever got into real estate. And he said, diversification is a recipe for mediocrity. And it was his way of saying, think a little bit bigger, take some risks. I think their mutual fund has something like 6 to 9 stocks in it at any given time, that they're definitely stock picker type of fund. And I felt very uncomfortable with that. And that's when you have to do a gut check. I love this friend, really respect what they're doing from a business standpoint. They're way wealthier than I am. So I just, for me, it just didn't fit the way that I wanted to invest. And Warren Buffett will say things like, diversification is the cover for incompetence, things like that. And people look at that as a negative thing. And I don't look at that as a negative thing at all. I look at that as a positive. Like, I could be an expert in this. Like, if I really want to niche down, this is what I can be an expert in. Let's get real. And we all know specialists get paid more. That heart surgeon who only fixes that one valve surgery gets paid a lot for doing it and does it all day long. That guy gets paid the most. And it sounds a little bit boring to specialize that much. But at the same time, it's like, I'm really thinking about niching down and doing what I do best, and then passively diversifying into things that other people do best. So if I want that particular heart valve surgery, I'm going to go to that guy. But if I want a knee surgery, I'm going to a different guy. And so when you're thinking about your investments like this, we're going to passively invest with experts at the top of their field. And we can, as accredited investors, we can get into most funds and most deals with the best operators out there. And we just have to know where to look. Third-party due diligence funds, registered investment advisors, they're out there to find like the best of the best. And so I just really focus on diversification. So when we started our fund, my specialty is kind of that middle-sized multifamily, like that the 10 to probably 100, 150 unit building is really where I specialize. Probably larger, like 30 to 80-ish, somewhere around there is really where I know how to work those deals, find them off market, negotiate with sellers, and mom and pop kind of stuff. And then maybe just when you start to break into the broker level of 100 plus units, where there's no mom and pop negotiating with that anymore, and you got to go the professional route. So that's kind of where I specialize. Those are the operators that I know. That's what we really focus in on our club. We do a weekly meeting with people who just want to underwrite deals together. And that's really what we focus on bringing in. I'm not looking at self-storage. I'm not looking at mobile home parks. I'm not getting distracted by shiny objects. I have those in my portfolio. I don't run those. I don't look for those. Sometimes they fall in my path because when you have a big network, some unrelated things will shake out of that. So I try to stay in my lane, but I will opportunistically pick up things that I think I can handle. Like, for example, we have an RV park, but it's long-term. So it's more like a multifamily than it is like a hotel. And so I'll make some exceptions, but for the most part, I specialize. And then when we were starting our fund, my husband had left his W-2. He got laid off for the last time, which was like a huge score because he was going to quit. Mm-hmm. And then they laid him off like 5 days after he picked his quitting date. He got called in and HR was there and he was like, yes, severance, unemployment. I was going to quit anyway. And the severance actually went until the day he was going to quit. So it was like he got all the not working, still being paid on the day he was planning on quitting anyway. And so we started our fund. And I was like, we really need to focus on cash flow. We had been focusing on cash flow for about a year, getting ready to have him leave his W-2. Because equity and large apartment investments, this story is going so many different directions.
No, it's great though. You're going into all these different pieces. So finish that thought.
Yeah. So we were focusing on cash flow, and that meant that we needed to do some things that were not in my wheelhouse. Like, multifamily is not a cash flow kind of business. for the GP. It might be for LPs if you have enough of them and you're doing a good job of kind of stacking them up in snowball style. But for the GP, we get paid last. Like we're absolutely last in the capital stack. And so I wasn't making any money off of the buildings that we had. And so for people who are like, I want more passive income and I want to grow my wealth so I can quit my job and spend time with my family, I'm like, that's just not the key. That's a new career. That's a career shift. And it's not a way to have more time and more passive income. If that's why you want to get into multifamily, then you should just be an LP. Like work harder at what you're good at, your specialty, and just invest your money with an expert. Unless
you need a mic drop right there. Just like end the episode. That's enough. We're done. Yeah. So good.
Just be an LP. If you really like, if you're like me, where I didn't have another career that was high paid, my specialty was, it's like a low level white collar work was what I did. So for me, it made sense to make that career shift. Plus I was looking for something to keep me really busy while my husband was still in his W-2. Then afterwards we were like, we got to focus on cash flow and this is not it. So we went back to the private lending. We had been doing it all along, but we just really doubled down on that. That's some pretty reliable cash flow because the senior lender, who gets paid first? So think about the capital stack. As a senior lender, I get paid first. And if I'm in the fund that's originating the loan, I also get the points. So our private lenders who come into our fund, we give them all the interest and our fund keeps the origination points. And that's how we make money. It's a management fee. Basically, we charge the borrower for that. And then the money that we actually lend out that earns interest, our investors get all of that. So that's basically how we work. So we put our own money in our own fund where I'm making interest off of that. And then I am able to split the points with my partners. So I brought in two partners who are private lending specialists. One was running a hard money fund out of just his own money. He's a retired CEO from a large retail corporation. I think it was $1 billion plus a year revenue, top line revenue.
Wow.
He knows how to run a large company, but he had retired and was just running his own little thing. And brought in another partner who she raised a lot of private capital for her fix and flip business. And so they're experts at what they do. And I brought them in and I said, I want to work with you. We had done a couple of multifamilies together that I was more the leader on those. And then I said, with what was going on in multifamily and the struggles that people were having, and I just didn't really feel like I could raise money and find enough deals to place the capital. I thought it would be hard to raise because people are feeling burned right now. And then even if I was able to raise the money, I was like, I don't know if I can place it in multifamily. I'm just not seeing enough deals right now. This was like a year and a half ago. So I said, let's really focus on the short-term lending because that's how we're making our money. That's how people are going to make it through this, whatever downturn weirdness is going on right now. Is it a recession? What it is. And so I partnered up with these specialists so that we could diversify. So once every other quarter, we'll bring in an equity deal that's more in my lane, and that's my job. Like, what multifamily operators do we want to partner with? Do we want to buy something and run it ourselves or run our own asset management? So some sort of equity deal, people need that for growth and need that for tax depreciation. But for older people who are late 40s to mid 50s, that's most of the people who invest with us. They're looking for cash flow. They're investing in their fund. They don't need depreciation. You can't use depreciation in your retirement account anyway, because it's already tax advantage. So they're not going to give you more. And if you're not a real estate professional, you can't use that depreciation to offset your active income. So if you make more than $100,000 a year, you can't use any depreciation to offset your active income. Zero. So the only time that you can use depreciation to offset your active income is if one, you make less than $100,000 a year and then is capped at what, 12.5 per partner. So what is that, 25K a year? And for those who make less than 100 grand, I mean, I guess they might have that much depreciation, but typically don't have much. You're
not really worried about taxes at that point.
Exactly. And then if you're over 100 grand, the only way to offset the active income or ordinary earned income with depreciation is if you're a real estate professional full time. And so most people who invest with us are not full-time real estate professionals, and they make way more than 100 grand a year. They couldn't be in our fund, basically. So for me, it was just like, they don't care about depreciation anymore at that point, retirement investors. So we're doing the diversification through short-term hard money loans and then occasional equity deals, and bringing together a group of people who can each specialize in their thing. Think of it like a surgical team where we're all going to go in there and work on the same patient, or we work in the same hospital, but we all have a different job within the fund.
I love this. So many gems dropped, and I'll keep my snippet very short because you are spewing so much knowledge.
I can monologue like nobody else, man.
This is amazing. And so one thing that comes to mind during everything that you're saying is one of my favorite books by Dan Sullivan. It's that who, not how kind of philosophy and mentality. And that's exactly what you were able to implement with everything you're doing. You're like, I'm just going to be a beast at this one thing. And then I'm going to be able to figure out who is a beast in their element. And then I can take the LP side and ride that wave. Yep. Meanwhile, I'll still be able to get returns from my investors, but I'm just going to focus right down this path, and this is what we are going to do. So hats off to you for being able to figure that out. And then you took it to the next level. And this is where it got mind-blowing, when you're like, you know what? I'm seeing that I need cash flow right now, so I'm going to go back to hard money. And instead of me trying to figure it all out, me, I, real estate's a team sport. So I'm going to bring in two experts. They got my back, and we're just going to dominate that as well. So salute to you. That is amazing. Now, let's bring it all the way back here. And you can choose any element from everything that you just dropped on us. But tell me some, or a little bit about some of the challenges and trials and tribulations that you went through. Rather it's, back with your husband when he was taking the breadwinning side and you were doing everything at home. Hats off to you for that. Or rather it's when he lost his job and you're like, you know what? I've got this. I'm going to run the ship. We're going to be just fine from here. Or maybe it's on the hard money line. Whatever. You let me know. But any of the trials and tribulations that you're experiencing, I'm very intrigued.
Okay, so this is a great question because we tend to glorify entrepreneurship and downplay how likely it is to fail. We'll hear statistics like this percentage of business fails in the first year, fails in the first 5 years, whatever. I don't know what they mean by fail. Does that mean that they sold it to somebody else? Because that exit seemed like it would be a success, but I don't know how they're defining fail, right? Because sometimes they do well and you go do something else because you can. I don't know, but we downplay how difficult it is. And that makes people think that, oh, if I just start a business. And I was at a business conference like 2 weeks ago, just a general business conference. And I was sitting in the back and I had to leave early. Like I was like crying. I was losing it in there. And we stepped out. My husband went to go bring the car around and he's like, what is going on? Like, why are you so upset? And I said, I feel like sitting in the back of the room there that they're telling us, it's like a successful business person getting up on stage who has figured it out, right? Is like, if I went to an NBA prep camp and some of the most successful NBA players were on stage telling me exactly what I need to do to get into the NBA. And I do exactly what they say. I'm still not getting into the NBA. There's still no chance. I could follow it to the letter, to the T, practice as many hours as they practice and do all the free throw hacks and all the things they say. And I still have no career in the NBA. I said, I think that there's this feeling in these business rooms that if people just follow the plan and follow the thing, that they will be successful. I said, now there's no doubt they cannot be successful without doing those things. These things are required for success. You have to do all of these things. But at the end of the day, your likelihood of success is still pretty low. And I specifically, like, say, take a personal brand, for example. You get on, Emma Powell with the thing, and she's been on the, and I just don't know if it's really ever going to give me the kinds of returns that the amount of effort that I'm putting into oversharing online is going to yield. There's no guarantee of success. And so you're going out and you're spending a lot of time doing this thing. And we were out hiking last Saturday and we get kind of partially up this foothill. And I'm looking around. It looks like the desert. We look like we're in Arizona or Los Angeles or something. We drove all the way to downtown Salt Lake City. And I'm looking at all the pretty mountains go by. And I thought we were going to hike up in some trees and see a lake or a waterfall. But instead, we park like at the Capitol building and start walking up in these ugly foothills. It's like at the end of the pretty mountains. And I said, where are we going? And he said, we're hiking Twin Peaks. And I said, oh, are you sure? Because I think Twin Peaks is over there. Like, I can see it from where we are. This is not Twin Peaks. He said, yes, it is. And he pulls out all trails and he shows me. It says Twin Peaks right on there. It's like a 4-mile hike. I'm like, okay. I mean, that sounds not right, but it says right there, maybe that's not Twin Peaks over there, right? So we get halfway up this hike and I'm standing there and I'm looking at him like, that is not Twin Peaks. Those are like little bumps. That is not what we are trying to hike to today. And so I pull out my map and I zoom out and sure enough, the Twin Peaks is the big one. This is another Twin Peaks. It's the same. And I said,
no.
the wrong mountain. You picked the wrong map. And he was like, well, do you want to turn around and drive down to the other one and hike that one? That's a brutal hike. He's looking at it on his all trails. He's like, I don't even think there's a trail. He goes, are you sure? I said, no, let's finish hiking this one. So we're hiking up this ugly, brown, looking, and I'm thinking, oh, trees and waterfalls, and we weren't getting that at all. And I said, honey, this feels like our business sometimes. Like we are really hiking hard up the wrong hill. And we think we're hiking up the right hill until we're almost to the top. And I'm like, wait a second, did we just climb the wrong hill? And we're just laughing at ourselves. But that feeling of, I really hope that I am putting this much effort into the right mountain, because it's effort no matter what mountain you pick. And if you pick the wrong one, so there's so much self-doubt. There's so much feeling like I could hike to the top of this mountain and realize I didn't hike at the right mountain, or you can't get to the top, right? We hiked the Arizona Trail as a family last year. We took a sabbatical and took 3 months to hike across Arizona. And when we started out day one, that first step at the Mexican border, I just remember standing there thinking, like, the odds of us walking across Arizona and getting to the Utah border are very low, but we're going to try this anyway, right? And we did it, and we finished. And my youngest daughter, she set a record for the youngest finisher of that trail ever. She was 11 years old.
Wow.
I didn't know it at the time until we were about halfway through that she was making this attempt, that it would be a record breaker. So there, I could tell you exactly how to hike the Arizona Trail and how to break a record doing it, right? But if you started at the Mexican border, could you actually make it to the Utah border? So all of that feeling of, I'm going to try, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to learn what I can along the way, I'm going to learn from the failures as well as the successes. But at the end of the day, like, I have some pretty specific goals, and I don't know if what I'm doing is going to achieve those goals. And that's the hardest thing to deal with, because it's so much work, emotional stress, energy, and I actually don't even know if it'll work. Now, I'm going to package that in saying, I believe real estate is a get-rich guarantee if you give it enough time and you don't quit. So that is what keeps me going. There were parts on the Arizona Trail where we got off track and we're looking around like, I think we're lost, right? But we figured out that we just have to walk across Arizona. It doesn't have to be along this exact trail on the map. So we would wind back and pick up where we got lost, and then we eventually finished. Do we walk every step of the actual Arizona National Scenic Trail? No, right? And so I do feel like that real estate thing may end you up in wealthy land if you keep going and don't quit and don't do really stupid things that make you have to declare bankruptcy. So that path I am sure of. I'm just aiming towards the Utah border. If I get there at this point or that point, it doesn't really matter. I know that I will get there eventually. So that is, but the specific goals that I have for my business are very different.
Pause there real quick, because I just want to say something about that. I love that. I love that story. I love that entire kind of metaphor that is. And it's so accurate. And one of the things that I think is so important that I think you are alluding to is you have this vision, and it's this kind of overarching vision of where you're trying to go, right? And like you said, there is no surefire map. There's 1,000 different ways you can get there. But I think one of the things that you have done and we have done, and people that have gotten to at least a piece of where they're trying to go, is they persevered through. And so you can hit every single thing. You can go on the wrong mountain. You can go off trail, but it's the decision of, am I going to quit, or am I going to keep going towards that Utah border? And so I think one of the things that you really showcased right there and through all those stories is just like, you didn't quit, you didn't stop. And whether it's pivots along the way, you keep going. So I just think that's so awesome. Did you want to hit on any other challenges there, or do you want me to move on?
Well, I was saying something to my husband recently. It's like, in every measurable way, our lives are so much better now than before when you were working. Because I was stressed out about something and I was apologizing for dragging him into this. I said, I feel so bad. Like, he looked at me and said, a bad day in this business is better than a good day at the office anytime. And he was just like, this is not stress. Like, what he dealt with as an IT guy in a startup, that was stress. This is not stress. And so I sat back and I was like, you know what? This is better. That's better. This is better. That's better. That's better. I said, the only thing that's not better in our lives right now compared to what we were doing before is the irregular income. We never really know when we're getting paid. And we don't really know how much we should set aside to live on versus investing. And then we'll invest a little too much because maybe we didn't get paid when we thought we would, and then we're broke again and we're terrified and putting stuff on credit cards. And that is a scary, scary thing. And it is a big deal. I don't want to minimize that because all investors, full-time investors, deal with this. There's just nothing like a steady W-2 paycheck, right? But if that's the only real problem that we have now versus all of the issues that we had before, and our lives are so much better. So we are really struggling with that lumpy, irregular income, and some months are pretty scary and ugly, and that stresses me out. But everything else is better. So you have to kind of weigh, your pros and your cons there.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's so true. And it's something that we talk about all the time. And whether it's with other investors or whatnot, it's funny because a lot of times you go into that like, well, I'm broke today. And they're like, well, are you broke or is your money just kind of out in investments? And it's like, well, there's a lot of distinctions we can make here. But, so I love that you talked about that because a lot of people don't. And it's very, very important, like you said, especially if you're full time.
Yep.
So I want to ask a question, though, with whether it's whether it's lending or whether it's your investments or whatever it is, how do you manage your risk? Meaning like, what are things that you're kind of more pushy towards and okay with risking it? And what are things that you're very kind of apprehensive about?
Well, there are really only two ways to manage risk. One is to know what you're doing. The other is to diversify. So again, it goes back to that specialization and diversification. So if I'm good at something and I'm going to learn more about it, I'm going to get more experience. Experience is more important than learning because you're learning while you're getting the experience. So don't be one of those people who learns and learns and learns and learns and uses that as an excuse for procrastination. Learning and preparation is extremely important, but it can really easily mask and make itself look like taking action. It's pseudo action. So just make sure that you're able to combine preparation with actual action taking. And by action taking, I mean, start the business, put the money in the investment. At a certain point, just do it. Now, if it's too much money and it is giving you sweats, put in less. If somebody came to me and said, hey, Emma, I know your fund minimum is $50,000. I'm an accredited investor. I can certainly afford that. But I've never worked with you before. And I would like to put in $10,000 into one of your deals and just see how you are. How do you communicate? How do we get along? Like, is the deal going to perform? Like, I just want to try you out. I would say, sure, here's the wiring information. I would never say, oh, our fund minimum is $50,000. So just say if it's too much money and it's making you nervous and it's preventing you from taking action, just put in less money. Go find a crowd fund. If you're an unaccredited investor, put in a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 and just learn, because you're never going to learn as well as you do by having some real money on the line. Yeah. I learned, one of my friends is a competitive poker player, and he'll go to a tournament and he spends like $500 on an entry fee, right? And so he knows that he is only out this $500. Even if he walks away and he loses everything, it's $500, right? But he has a chance to win 30,000. So he just stays in. It's like hedging your losses and making your wins pretty big. And so he'll walk away from there making $1,000. If he only makes $500, he's like, I paid for the trip, right? Paid for the entry fee. So having that kind of an attitude, like, I'm going to hedge how much I can lose in this, say $5,000 or $10,000 in a deal, and I'm going to use that to learn as much as I can. Because how are you going to learn how to play competitive poker? Go do tournaments. Like, you can read a book and you can play online poker all you want, but until you're sitting there in that casino with real people looking at you, you're never going to learn how to play competitive poker. And it's not exactly gambling at that point, because people think of poker as gambling, right? But this is not a high stakes game. This is a $500 entrance fee, and you could win 30 grand, which he did, and use it as a down payment to go buy himself a house. So, and he doesn't win every tournament, but you only have to win a few. And that's exactly how real estate is. So he knows what he's doing. He took the risk, he took the action, he hedged his losses. And so for me, that was such a great metaphor for how I run my real estate business. He had me over for dinner one night and he's like, I won some money. What should I do with them? Buy a house, dude, buy a house. So me, it was like, that's how you figure it out. He taught me how to play poker. I actually beat him that night. He's like, I basically played the game for you. I'm like, fine. You can
Oh, I love this. This is amazing. And let me ask you this. This is kind of a two-part question. And Cole, don't fire me yet. I apologize. I'm kind of going off the rails here. But I want to know about your business in whatever entity, your future outlook, but also on the journey to get to that future outlook, what kind of KPIs are you going to track?
Okay. Really good question. nobody asks about KPIs. And I think that that's where the nitty gritty of business really comes in, because podcasts can kind of focus around like general techniques and strategies and inspirational stuff, like a stay-at-home school mom of 6 was able to, that kind of stuff. But the KPIs are really when the nuts and bolts come in, and most people don't focus on that. So most people who are in business, certainly outside of business, but even in business, can't even make a simple profit and loss statement. Like that's the KPI right there. If you don't have a profit and loss statement in your business every single month that you can look and say like here, and again, who, not how, do you have to do it yourself? If you're a solopreneur, yes. But if you have a team of people or you have a business model that can support hiring an expert, then just make sure that you know how to read the P&L, maybe do it yourself at the beginning of the business and then hire someone. So when that P&L is coming in, that you can actually review it. Or you have a partner that you really trust to review it. Who, not how, again. So that P&L is basically just saying like, here's all the revenue that we brought in this month. And here are all the expenses that it cost us to make that revenue. And is it a net profit? Is it a net loss? We don't know, right? But just having that in front of you, and you'll see so many breadcrumbs at each point of the breakdown. So that for me is a huge KPI in my business, that somebody knows what's going on with the P&L at a somewhat regular basis, because otherwise it's an expensive hobby. You don't even know if you're making money.
That is so good. And if anybody, I should say everybody that is listening, you need to like go back and just listen to that again, because it's so instrumental. And I love that, because I live and die by the numbers. And like you said, a lot of people are, I feel like, living on hopes and dreams a lot of times. And it's frustrating because that is not a business. Like you said, that is a hobby. What are the numbers? Are you making money? Are you losing money? So yeah. I love that.
It's Nate, not hard. P&Ls are not hard. Like, look up a YouTube video. It'll take you 25 minutes to learn how to do it. So that's one of those things that is just one of those low-hanging laziness fruits. And I don't like it either. Like, one of the reasons I specialize is so I can have a partner who looks at the P&L, right? So I, practicing what I preach, right? This is a struggle of mine, but it's not hard, and it's business 101. If you cannot do this, you should maybe not be in business.
I agree. All right, Em, I think it's time for the hot seat. Nate?
Oh my goodness. I think I was ready. I think so. I think it's time for the fire round.
All right. So we're going to ask you a couple questions. You can answer very succinctly, or you can kind of elaborate, but preferably shorter because it makes it more fun. Ready?
Go for it.
So what separates top performing entrepreneurs from the rest of the crowd?
Oh, sorry. I think the music is overriding your voice.
How's that?
That's better.
There we go. Sorry, it's a little different on my end. All right, let's try that again. What separates top performing entrepreneurs from the rest of the crowd?
Oh, goodness. Honestly, I don't know. That was probably why I was so upset sitting in that business conference, was sitting back there and being like, are they talking about me? Am I going to be able to make a go of this? Because top performers do the work, right? They are doing all the socials, they're marketing, they are doing the P&Ls, they are doing the finances, they're doing all the things, but that's not necessarily what makes them a top performer. I mean, there's something, the it factor, that we can't really define. You're never going to find out if you're the one with the it factor if you don't do all the things, right? But I think there's also still a tremendous amount of success to be earned, even if you're not Mark Cuban, right? So do you just want to make enough money so that you can retire well? Then that's a top performing entrepreneur in my book. Somebody who can support a family in an enduring long-term way and be able to think about some lifestyle stuff. That's a top performing entrepreneur. Most people don't even make it that far. We don't have to be Mark Cuban. In fact, probably what Mark Cuban is doing, a lot of that wouldn't even apply to us. And sometimes we get locked up in, well, this is the way Vaynerchuk does marketing, or this is the way Hormozy does marketing. And a lot of it just doesn't even apply to what we're doing. So set your goals, work towards your goals, and put in the work and climb up the right mountain. It might not be the Hormozy mountain. Figure out what mountain you're supposed to be climbing and go climb it.
What's a daily habit that's contributed to your success?
It's going to be the opposite of what a lot of people say. I wake up naturally every day. I take the miracle morning and I say to myself when I wake up, not when the alarm goes off, but when I naturally wake up, I say, I'm waking up now because my body has had enough sleep, which means that I'm well rested and this is going to be a wonderful day because I had enough rest. And if in the process of trying to get myself out of bed, I fall back to sleep, then I wake back up again and I say, oh, I guess my body decided it needed some more sleep. And so just that allowance of letting myself wake up naturally every day. Some days I wake up earlier, some days I wake up later. And then the first thing I do when I wake up is I open up my calendar and I open up my my alarm, my alarm app with the alarms on it. And I have all my alarms set every 30 minutes throughout the day. So I just turn those alarms on. So if I have a 9 o'clock on the calendar, I just flip between the apps and set my 9, 11, 1:30, and 2:30 alarms, and then 5:30 in the evening, whatever. And that way the alarms are going off all day and I never miss appointments, because that was a big problem of mine, was not going to appointments. So I found that I'm just much, much more productive when I have stuff on the calendar that has the alarms. I make sure I'm there and I make sure I'm well rested to get started with the day. So I really control my calendar very, very tightly.
Love that. I'm gonna have to try that. Wake up naturally. That is very intriguing. All right. What is a piece of advice that you would give to yourself if you were starting again?
House hack sooner. We bought our first house when we were very young, right? And so I don't think that we really could have started any sooner. But that house we had, it was a cute little house and the cute little yard, and I'm doing the cute little like cottage mom kind of thing, right? And I think if I had thought about it a little bit differently, especially when we just had the one baby, we had an extra bedroom we could have been renting out to somebody else. We could have stretched ourselves to buy a slightly bigger house so that we could live in our own basement or attic, or live above your own garage. Maybe it's a rough living condition, but you fix that up while you live there and you're renting out the nice part of the house. I mean, there are all sorts of things you can do. But starting earlier in house hacking, and I hear this on every podcast I've ever listened where they ask this question, like, what would you do differently? Or what advice would you give yourself? And 99% of the time, it's one of those: either start earlier or house hack. House hack is the cheapest and easiest way to become a real estate investor. We still house hack now. We traded our big house out, bought a townhome. It had 4 bedrooms upstairs and an unfinished basement. So we turned the basement into a 1-1, put in a separate entrance. And now we rent it out to a young couple that works at the Army base nearby. So we are still house hacking at this age. And we just put all our kids in the 4 bedrooms upstairs and then have that 5th bedroom downstairs being rented out. So house hacking is just, it's never inappropriate.
I love that. What is your favorite business book?
Communication books, like as a category. Business is about networking. It's about communication. So what you mentioned, Who Not How, I really like anything that talks about how to have a conversation with somebody, because I'm a great monologuer, not a very good listener, really. I mean, that's a skill I had to develop consciously. And so reading books like Crucial Conversations, I love nonviolent communication, even though it's about like negotiating between hostile countries in a lot of ways. It basically taught me that I can't control other people. I can only communicate, hopefully communicate what I'm trying to communicate. So that's helped me a lot in sales, being more of a problem solver instead of a product pusher, and just being able to say, I can ask good questions. I can figure out what's going on and help them steer them in the right direction. And if it's towards something that I can sell them, that like an investment in my fund, I hate using the word sell, but that's essentially what it is. We sell securities. Then that's what I'm looking for. That's my evil plan and my ulterior motive. And I like to make sure that that is out in front of people. Like if you call me and you're a fit for my fund, I will let you know. But you can also trust that if you're not a fit for my fund, I'm not going to try and obviously, like we have rules. Like if you're not accredited, you can't invest legally. Sorry, it's a non-starter, right? And so if somebody is accredited, but it's just not a good fit for them because they just have the wrong goals, right? I'll point them somewhere else. And so just being able to solve problems, communicate. So business books, you can't do business by a book. You can learn a lot, but until you learn how to talk to people, there's no business.
Love that. What is your favorite part of owning your business?
The flexible hours. I work part-time. My husband works part-time. So basically between the two of us, we have one share in our partnership. So the two of us are making up one person. And so we both get to work part-time, and we took the same amount of equity as my partners did for their portion. So we're able to divide and conquer between the two of us. And so we make less money and we own less of the business. I'm the co-founder and I own like the smallest piece of the business of anybody in there. Yeah, so just flexible hours and just being able to say, I can do this at this time or I can do this at that time because I got to be here or I got to be there for a personal reason or for a kid. And just being able to kind of fit things in whenever. I've had to have some boundaries about that, like when my kids want me to drop what I'm doing and become their therapist. Like it's between the hours of 8 and 5, right? And I might have time to be your therapist, but I might not. And so I have to be able to say no between 8 and 5. But there are a lot of times I can say yes. Just be like, yeah, let's what do you need? Let's go for a walk. Let's go get a boba tea and talk, right? And then I can just finish up what I'm doing later when they don't need me. So flexible hours, it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of hard work, but you kind of control when you do it.
So good.
What is something new that you've implemented with your business that you've noticed has helped kind of drive your success?
All right, so I feel like such a hypocrite saying this. I hate doing it so much, and I avoid it at every possible cost, but it's the outbound phone calls. There's just no substitute. There's no amount of automated email drip campaign. There's no amount of social posting or paid ads or any of the ringless voicemail, even texting. I could write you a text in myself manually right now and send it. And that is easier than just making the outbound phone calls. And so we set some KPIs at work recently where we need to make a certain number of phone calls per week. And where they come out of our automated workflow where they get popped into manual calls. So we're automating what we can, right, to make the follow-up and the tracking a little bit easier, but the automation can't make the call for me. So we got numbers the other day and I have the most number of outstanding calls because I just hate doing it. And the whole thing was like we got to make outgoing calls and they're doing it. And sometimes I do a great job and other times I don't. So that is something kind of newer, but the realization that that's what has to happen because most of us put outbound calls the last thing on the list and it really should be the first thing on the list.
It's so good. And I completely agree with that. There we go. I feel like the outbound calls is really like what closes absolutely everything out. And I'm with you. There's just so much resistance there. I don't know if some people are gifted and can just do it, but I think most of us, it's just a struggle. Just always is.
And if it's not a struggle for you, I asked my partner, because she was like, Emma, it's not that hard, blah, 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 right? And that's like when I tell my kid when they fall down and I'm like, oh, come on, you're fine, right? I'm like, it's not fine. It is hard. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, for 1 being this is pretty easy and 10 being like, I would rather check myself into a mental hospital than do this. Okay. I'm like an 8. And she goes, oh, I'm like a 1 or maybe a 2. I said, that's why you think it's not hard. So if you're one of those people who thinks that it's not hard, that is your superpower. You make eye contact with the camera, lean into it, and just do that. Just do that because nobody else wants to do it, and you will have value on any team that you want to be in.
So good. So good. So let's dial it back for a second as we wrap up. So we talked about your entry, how you got into real estate, how you kind of climbed the ladder through different businesses and everything like that. We talked about you starting the fund, all the different growth, and just kind of like the general life scenario that you went into. There's a million pieces in here that I can't even touch on and trying to summarize this, but it was awesome. So my last 2 questions for you is 1, where can people find you? And 2, any final advice before we go?
Yeah, my podcast is Passive Income Adventures. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all the places, right? And we just have conversations with people who are just out there doing the thing, whether they're beginners setting goals or they've been retired for years and they just are philanthropists and everywhere in between. We just have talks with people who are making passive income and able to make their lifestyle decisions based on their passive income. And I just want to share stories. There's a lot of BS out there, and the show attempts to keep it real, cut through all of that, and just show like, what does this really look like to get it? And then how do you live? What is life like after you get it? So passive income adventures, we just share all sorts of fun stuff over there. Last piece of advice, I mean, you better like it. If you don't like it, somebody who likes it is gonna win. Like it's not but it's also not a zero-sum game. But it's really difficult to find success doing something that you don't really enjoy. A lot of people look at real estate investing as a money-making opportunity, and it does attract a lot of people like that too. But if you don't like buildings and the people who live and work in them, this is the wrong business for you. So just make sure you like it. And if you don't like it, there are people like us who can invest for you and help you diversify. There's nothing saying that you need to be a real estate investor to invest in real estate. You buy Apple stock, but you're not the designer, right? But you can still buy the Apple stock. So if you know real estate's important to diversify and make money, go get yourself some. But unless you really love it, don't be the one who's in charge of running it.
Mic drop. On that note, holy cow. Oh my goodness. I'm going to echo Cole's sentiment from a while ago. Those that are listening, those that are tuning in, rewind, play this thing from the top, all the way through. You are going to get so much knowledge, and so many gems have been dropped. Emma, the honor has been all ours. Thank you so much for coming out of the show, Forged in Fire. It's been a pleasure. Everybody that's listening, please get home safe. If you're traveling, if you're at home, continue to relax. We will catch you all on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in. Take care, everybody.
Having me.
Peace.